everybody, this is Gaupnekaren. Look at this thing. I just can't escape it, can I? I don't mind it, really. Rayman is actually one of my favorite video game franchises, with Rayman 2 being my favorite video game of all time. It would make perfect sense to review the first game in the series. If I do remember correctly, it's thanks to this game that our family got Rayman 3 on PC way back when. My cousin had a PS1, and this was one of the few games she had, and she really likes this game. Since my brother borrowed it somewhat frequently, I think I'm a bit hazy on the details, and I was still in kindergarten with dirt up my ass. My parents got the idea to buy Rayman 3 on PC, and ever since I've been a huge fan of Rayman. Last time I played this game was when I made that shit LP with shit mic. Just don't watch it, I'm a changed man. So does this game hold up? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So, how's the story? Well, the story is existing. It's really light-hearted, and in ways pretty funny. In the world of Rayman, you have the Great Protoon, which maintains stability. In some ways, it's pretty similar to the Heart of the World from later games, like Rayman 2 and 3. So maybe it's supposed to be the same thing. One day, the Great Protoon is taken by Mr. Dark, and the world ain't stable no more. Then Rayman is tasked by rescuing the Electoons, beating Mr. Dark and recovering the Great Protoon. That sounds pretty simple, so that must be the scabies easy, right? Oh, you poor soul. Either way, the story doesn't go any farther than that, so let's just jump on the gameplay. Rayman 1 is a 2D platformer collectathon. You start with the ability to walk, jump, and stick your tongue out. That's pretty much everything. Rayman is a slower platformer though. The camera is somewhat pulled in towards Rayman, and he moves at a slow but comfortable pace. He has some momentum in his jumps, but it's easy to get used to it pretty fast actually. You get more abilities the further the game goes. The first upgrade is the ability to punch. Now make fun of punching being an upgrade, but have you seen his bones? He got no power! Boy, that's some skinny arms! The punching is one of the better mechanics in the game. It's basically a boomerang hitting enemies on the way back. You can also charge the punch, allowing it to go further. By, for example, jumping or ducking, you can influence the direction of the fist on the way back. This is probably the best way to take care of enemies that are way too short to hit under normal circumstances, or just flat out duck your punches. In the game, you have 3 power-ups, and most of them revolve around the fist. The first power-up is the Golden Fist. This makes your attack stronger, allowing you to kill certain enemies in one punch without charging your fist. Next is the Speed Fist. This allows your fist to go even faster and further without needing to charge it. Combined with punching in the air, which makes the punch about half the top speed and reach, grants you pretty much the ability to take things off from a considerable amount of distance without stopping. There's also a third power-up that has nothing to do with the fist, so might as well just bring it up now actually. Just so it's done. It increases your life bar from 3 to 5 health points. There's also a smaller variant which gives you a bit of health, but won't give you additional health points if your total of health points is 3 at the moment. The power-ups are pretty useful, but you lose them if you die, so don't do that. The next upgrade is the ability to hang off ledges. It doesn't sound like much, but it's essential in a game like this. Hanging on ledges and getting the jump on projectile enemies and short enemies is vital for your own survival. You can jump off the ledges as soon as you land, making the game's pace feel so much better. The third upgrade is the grab upgrade, allowing you to grab floating purple things and other shit like 1-ups. It's basically the purple lamp stuff from Rayman 2 or the lockjaw from Rayman 3. The fourth upgrade is the most iconic. The helicopter hair. The debut of the helicopter hair works different here though compared to later entries. Instead of lasting until you reach the ground, it works for a couple of seconds until it just stops, until you land again. It works well enough though, and having the ability to use the helicopter hair indefinitely would probably lead to people cheesing through the platforming. The fifth and final upgrade is the ability to run. This also doesn't sound like much, but it's pretty nice to have around when you eventually revisit levels. So, I've talked about the challenge without actually saying what the challenge is or where it comes from. That's why we're going to talk about the worlds in the game. There are 6 worlds in total. The first 2 worlds have 4 levels, worlds 3 through 5 have 3 levels, and the last world has 1 level. Throughout the journey, if you survive, you'll travel through the Dream Forest, the most lively and visually pleasing forest you'll ever see. Beyond that, a land made of instruments and giant Buddhist monks. Blue Mountain, a mountain that gives you the blues. Picture City, the utmost creativity of an art student given form. The Caves of Scops, the home of this thing. And last but not least, the Candy Chateau, a 5-year-old kid's wet dream. If you didn't notice it before, which I wouldn't know how you did, this game uses 2D sprites, and it looks beautiful. Certain elements in the background like plants are animated, which adds to the game's charm this game is filled with. Even the music adds to the charm of the game. It's catchy yet atmospheric, and they all range from somewhat frantic to quiet beats to just downright beautiful. The music is that good. The composer of this game, Rayman has sadly passed away recently. I don't know what project he was involved with other than Rayman 1, but my condolences to his family and friends, of course. The difficulty is something we should talk about. The game starts off somewhat simple with Dream Forest. It's a good start to the game. Bandland becomes a bit more complex, but it's fairly manageable. It's in the Blue Mountains that the difficulty shows itself. In Rayman 1, the margin of error is really slim. You will be platforming on disappearing platforms with projectiles coming your way. Platforming in an R-scroll section where the edges of the screen kills you, and there's hazards everywhere. Temporarily flying with spikes and bottomless pits everywhere, and etc. While all of it is doable, your hands will fucking sweat like a motherfucker. I've heard some people say that the difficulty in the second half of the game is bullshit, but it's not really though. The game shows you ahead of time what you should react to. Most of the time, just fucking picture city pencils bullshit. But other than that one example, things are usually there to guide you whenever you need to jump far distances, so there aren't leaps of faith here, really. Unless you actually go back and forth somehow and maybe forget the level design. That's the only example I've got. There are two areas though that come to mind when talking about bullshit. The first one is the first area in Picture City where you need to avoid pencils, and the way I dodge them, being crouching and staying on the edge of the pencil, doesn't feel intentional in the slightest. But I can't rush that section though, because I'll most likely die from knockback or from the ink if the platform isn't in the right spot. Even the pencil, which comes over from above, even penetrates Rayman's shoe. Holy shit. Thank god there is any fucking hit detection there. The other area is in the mid to end of Eat Joe's in the Caves of Scops, but that has even less to do about the structure of the level and more about the positioning capabilities of some enemies. The first one is this small shit with homing projectiles that are a bitch to dodge. Not only that, they also appear in close proximity to or under low ceilings. Dealing with them is really time consuming, mostly due to their amount of health. And you need the fucking platform because of homing projectiles, they're gonna fuck you up. The second one is these piranhas. They jump out of the water and take a bite out of you, and the knockback from their attack will send you right into the water. So fuck that shit. You can kill the piranhas, but the opportunity to attack them is too slim, so the reward isn't worth the risk. So dodging the attack is really the better option. Of course, you have to keep in mind that I'll be playing the PSN version of Rayman 1 in Europe, and that one is apparently PAL, so it's slower than the US version because fucking TV bullshit in the 90s. But yeah. Actually, going off script, I'm just gonna say something that happened in the original LP. When I was in this area, I was playing with cheats at the time because I already knew that I wasn't able to beat the game because I played the game also even worse at it. But holy shit, that section made me lose my sanity. I was screaming fucking loud to a point where I had to get on my scooter, drive to fucking Gaupnekaren, the fucking town, 2 kilometers away from here. Had to sit down on a bench, play some fucking Pokemon Go, because hey, who wasn't playing Pokemon Go? After 45 minutes, come back here, then went the fuck to sleep, woke up, and started again. That's the story, but that's the fucking story. No one can fucking defend that level. Okay, I'll just say it right now. No one can fucking defend that level. Well, moving away from that, the game is challenging, but not impossible if you have patience. But there's one thing that kinda ruins the game a bit though. The cages. In order to reach the last level of the game, the Candy Chateau, you need to collect every cage in the game. Getting every cage includes revisiting earlier levels with newer upgrades, so the best time to do it is when you reach the wall. I couldn't be bothered to do it, so I stopped playing for a few weeks and began doing that shit later. And well, yeah, that's fucking good game design. It's incredibly time consuming while being required to reach the final boss. I wouldn't complain if the quota was about at 80 to 90%. but it isn't it, so I need to complain. And you know what? The worst thing about that is that the Candy Chateau is a great world. Mr. Dark throws a few spells on you that changes the gimmick of the level. You start by platforming with a frying pan, when Mr. Dark makes a replica that kills you upon impact, aka Dark Rayman, then your controls are reversed, then you start running automatically, like fucking Temple Run, then you'll lose your attack until some Electoons get it back to you, which leads you into the final boss. You don't fight against Mr. Dark directly, you instead fight against bizarre fusions of the other bosses in the game. It can be hard, but it's mostly fun, I'd say. After you beat them, the world is saved and the credits roll. Rayman 1 is a game that I quite enjoy. It can be hard at times, quite hard at times, but the gameplay, the core gameplay, is done well, the ideas and visuals along with the music are utterly marvelous, and the challenge is usually challenging but fair. For me, there are two things that drag the game down though. First of all, the bullshit. It's not much of it here, but when it rears its ugly head, it just feels unbearable. The second thing that drags the game down for me is the cage collecting. It takes too long, and since you need to play through the whole stage without exiting, depending on how keen you were on the cage collecting, you potentially have to have a second playthrough where you go around every corner to hopefully hear a ding that means that something spawned. Yeah, that's a thing also. I can recommend this game, but only to people who are aware of the difficulty. You need some mad reflexes to get through the level somewhat unscathed. Well, depending on the situation, of course. For me, it was just fucking memorization. But you know, that's about it. The video is done, and I need to move on to another video. And that video will be about a certain raccoon. Oh, you know what it's gonna be. You know it, baby. It's time for Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. And I'll see you then.